Good evening and welcome to another episode of What's Your Story? Tonight we are sitting down with our friend and neighbor, Allyn Lamb. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
We've tried to get you on this show for a long time.
Well,
So-
I'm honored to be here with the Librarian of the Year, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. So you used to be on our library board, and you moved to Kennebunkport. When did you move here?
2015.
2015.
However, we had a presence here for several decades before that. So
How did you first find Kennebunkport?
we were on a vacation, a short vacation. It was kind of a weekend vacation, and we said, you know, this might be a nice place to have a place. So we did a little looking, and we found a place at the Arlington, and so we've had a condo here for decades, actually.
Yeah. And then you finally.
Then I retired, and Norma decided we were going to move up here.
So you're retired, but you do a lot of work. You do
Well,
a lot of volunteer work.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about SCORE, which is the Senior Corps of
Retired executives.
Executives.
Except they no longer use that acronym
Okay.
anymore because you don't have to be retired and you don't have to be an executive. So we
Okay.
have a lot of young working people who have social media expertise, marketing expertise. So you don't have to be retired or an executive. In fact, I think the majority of them may not be retired or executives.
And I always thought, because I never really looked into it, that SCORE was somewhat of a local organization, but it's really
It's nationwide.
pretty wide. Yeah, pretty widespread. And so if you decided that you wanted to vacation in Florida for a couple of months, I hope you wouldn't, but if you did, would you be able to work down there?
Yes, we work remotely and in person. In fact, the whole system kind of evolved with COVID, which I'll get into in a minute. But before SCORE, I was working with another organization that had retired executives in its name. It was called the International Executive Service Corps.
Okay.
And it's changed its name. It now stands for Improving Economies for Stronger Communities.
Okay.
Because you no longer have to be retired or an executive
Yeah.
for that organization either. So
Yeah.
what actually happened is there was a hiatus in the funding of that program, and during that hiatus, I was here, we had just moved actually into a new house, and I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out what I was going to do, so I went to the local county extension office and I said, is there anything I can do there to help you? And they said, no, but if you go over to the Farm Service Agency, they might have something.
Okay.
So I did that, and
And that's sort of your background, right?
well, yeah, I identify as a farmer. I'm a farmer first and foremost. I grew up on a dairy farm in western New York State. And then I went to college, I went to Cornell, and I worked on the Cornell University Vegetable Research Farm there. And after I graduated, I did go back to the family dairy farm, but I decided that's not what I wanted to be doing long term. So I also had an interest in finance because agriculture requires finance. We had a local production credit association, is what they were called back then. So we had that plus the Federal Land Bank. And I appreciated the work that the people I saw there were doing, and I said, maybe that's what I want to be doing. I tried to get in there, and I couldn't for a while. I went into commercial banking instead. So I was in commercial banking for 8 years, including 2 years at M&T Bank in Buffalo. And that's where I met Norma. I don't know if you've met my wife, Norma. She's kind of
I have
shy.
met your wife, Norma. I love your wife, Norma.
But I was going through a loan officer development program, and she was in the senior credit analyst in the credit department. And she was responsible for training, you know, the trainees coming through the program, including ignorant people like me. So she had that responsibility, and so that's how we met. So I ended up, as I said, 8 years in commercial banking, but a friend of mine who was also a farmer And he was a senior executive at Marine Midland Bank, which is now HSBC. He went to work for the Farm Credit System in Connecticut, and he called me and asked if I wanted to join, and I said I'd be happy to join because that's really where I wanted to be. So I joined the Farm Credit System. At that time, the PCAs and the federal land banks had merged, and it was just called the Farm Credit System. So I was with that organization for 18 years, and then I got a call from an organization in Pennsylvania. There were 3 organizations actually that were merging, and they asked if I would be interested in working with them as the CEO. So I did that. I worked there for 14 years. And then I retired in 2012, and I started work, actually, it's a little bit longer story, I guess, because my brother-in-law was active in international agriculture. So that's really where my interest in international agriculture started. And he was in the Ford Foundation and the World Bank and the Rockefeller Foundation. He was director of scientific research at the Rockefeller Foundation. So I got my interest in international agriculture from him. And when I retired, I did some projects for the World Bank and for, actually I worked for the Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria on a project. And I worked for some other non-governmental organizations, NGOs they're called. And I did some projects with them, but I finally got connected with IESC, which at that time was International Executive Service Corps. And I started doing some projects with them. They partnered with Land O'Lakes, the butter people, because they also have an international program. So I did a couple projects with them. And then this hiatus came. That was around 2017, and I didn't have anything to do, so that's when I joined SCORE.
Okay.
So I recently, about a month ago, I came back from a project I was doing in Zanzibar. And that was kind of an interesting one because of my experience in finance and agriculture, what I do on these international projects is I try and link farmers with financial institutions. So that's what I try to do. I try to teach the banks what they need to do to prepare themselves to finance farmers and agribusiness. And then I work with the farmers to train them how to be better prospects for the bank. So I try and put the two together.
That's incredible. So do you have a team that goes with you?
No,
or?
I do have in Tanzania, because I've been there so much, I do have a couple of people that I work with when I'm in country. But usually I'm doing the projects pretty much on my own.
Yeah. So, how do you get connected to it? Who is it that you're gonna?
If you go to iesc.org, they have a volunteer site there, and I would encourage anyone who is interested in that kind of thing to apply. Take a look at it. And it's not just about agriculture. They need help with all kinds of economic development, marketing, social media. They help. There's a section of local government where they have people who are in government in the U.S. go over there to help local governments. There's one other piece of this that I would like to share, and that is when I was with the Farm Credit System, we had these local advisory groups. And in one of the local advisory groups, we had a farmer who operated a farm in Dracut, Massachusetts. And his name was John Oganowski. And he was on one of our local advisory teams. And on his farm, he had 150 acres. So he had enough land so that there was the Vietnam War, and then there was issues in Cambodia. So there were a lot of immigrants from Cambodia who came over. And these folks needed a source of income, and they also needed food. And so he let them use his land at no cost. So he had another job. He was also an airplane pilot. And he was the pilot of Flight 11, American Airlines Flight 11, the first one to hit the World Trade Center.
My gosh.
So this international program that I work with, there's really two programs. One is called Farmer to Farmer, and the other is Feed the Future.
Okay.
Now, the Farmer to Farmer program is now called the John Oganowski, Doug Bereiter Farmer to Farmer program. So I would say he was one of the motivators for me getting involved in the international work.
And it's just so important to, you know, get out there and figure out how to fund, you know, because I think a lot of the people, they have a real talent for what they do and what they can grow, but then how do they, you know,
well,
how do they get that off the ground?
There are a host of issues, and finance is just one of them. And production and marketing and logistics, how do, you know, if they grow something, how do they get it to market? A colleague of mine who just retired as the county extension educator in York County also just came back from Zanzibar. I was there a month ago. He just came back last week. So I got him involved in the program. But he's a soils and plants expert.
Okay.
So he went over there and he was working on passion fruit and tomatoes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, now what does he know about passion fruit? It's not grown very much in the US. Well, he knows soils, he knows crops. So he gets to the basics and he can help them. The strange thing in Zanzibar is that they can grow tomatoes. They have plenty of land to do it. They know how to do it. But they're importing most of the tomatoes that they use in the country, which is kind of strange. So that was one of his projects.
Do we sort of do that with our potatoes? It seems like, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we had friends that lived up in Madawaska, that whole, you know, Aroostook County area. And I remember they used to get the whole month of October off. The kids used to go pick, because that was what you did. So I don't think they do that anymore.
No, I don't think so. They have machines that do that.
Yeah. So, but it's really interesting how, you know, I think there are some places that do that instead of just using your local. So around here in this town, or, you know, in the area here, are you helping farmers?
Yes, I help farmers all over the state and actually across the country. Very often, some of my knowledge is useful in other places, and so I'll get calls. In fact, I got one from Kansas yesterday. I'm not exactly a hogs expert, but they wanted someone that could help with business planning, and so I can do that kind of thing. But I help farmers all over the state. We have a few in our community here that I've been helping. Actually, the story of getting involved with SCORE is a little bit interesting, the way I got involved. I told you that I went to FSA, and they were the ones that really said, you need to be involved with SCORE in order to be able to help us. So I got involved, I called, and I made application, and then I get a call back from a guy named Steve Veazey. And Steve is the district director for Maine. So he's the boss of SCORE in Maine. And so he says, are you related to the Lambs in Western New York? And my standard response is, why? Do they owe you money? But, well, it turns out that Steve's brother, Jim, and my brother, Gordon, are in partnership on this farm in Western New York. And so that the farm now is run by my nephews and by Jim Veazey and his family. So it's kind of an interesting connection.
So as far as somebody, doesn't matter what their age is, they want to figure out, they think they have a great idea for a business. They've got no business plan, they've got a little bit of money. How do they go about getting in touch with SCORE to?
SCORE.org.
Okay.
Just go to SCORE.org, and then what happens is they will be placed with someone who will match them up with a suitable mentor. So that's how it works.
Yeah.
I primarily work with agriculture, so most of the accounts I get are directly related to agriculture.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And I help people get started. I help them with their business plan. I can help them with grant writing.
Oh, wow.
If they want to make changes in their business, I can help with that. And So it's pretty broad.
And then you have other people that can help with marketing. And
Yes, and so we have co-mentors. So I'm not a social media expert, so we have them, and so I call on them to work with me with a client when that's appropriate.
You're pretty good at cap travels, though, when you're out and about and have your picture taken with our Graves Library hat.
I do what I can. I do what I can.
So now, as far as like farming going, I would think, especially now, with prices being so expensive on all levels, storms, like weather changes, like all that kind of stuff, that must be pretty hard to.
Yeah, that's what makes agriculture especially risky. And if you go into one of these foreign countries, it's even more so. The financial institutions don't want to have anything to do with it because of the risk that it presents. There are ways to mitigate that risk and manage it. And so those are some of the things that I work with farmers to help them with, and work with the banks too.
Yeah. So now, a couple of years ago, I remember you going not to Zanzibar, but there was another trip that you took.
I've done many trips. I've been all over Africa. I've done several dozen of these trips. And I've been to Egypt a couple times, Lebanon a couple times, Sri Lanka, all over Africa. And on one of the trips, I was actually able to take Norma along with me, one of the Egypt trips.
Oh, wow.
And that was really kind of a special one.
Yeah.
And one reason it was special is because when I was giving my final report, I turned to Norma and asked her a question. She answered it, and so pretty soon she was answering all of their questions. They didn't want to hear from me at all. Norma had the answers.
So now, when you are not doing this stuff, as you go on vacations here and there, when you go to, say, you go to Portugal or a place like that, do you think about, like, do you walk around, find places, and?
I'm a farmer first.
Okay.
So, we're riding on the bus, and what I notice is everybody's asleep on the bus, and I'm looking out at the landscape and looking at the crops, and trying to take it all in. So that's very interesting for me.
So that local, the whole buy local and eat local. I mean, it seems like some of these places can really pull it off.
It's a win-win because you know where your food is coming from, you know how it's been produced. And maybe it costs a little bit more, maybe not, but it's worth it.
But boy, does it taste good.
Yeah. It's so much better for you.
Yeah, it really is. Do you have a garden at home?
Well, I try. I have a pot garden. I have deer and and raccoons, so I have to manage
Now,
it.
a pot garden around here these days is a little different. Do you mean a container garden?
Yeah, container garden. That's what I meant.
That could be taken so many ways here in Maine, especially northern Maine. So, the deer are your friends. They come in and, But, you're helping them, right?
Yeah, I try not to.
So, but you and Norma both enjoy flower gardens too. And I know you've helped us with our gardening here at the library on many occasions. And Norma's on the Seacoast Garden Club.
Right.
So. And you were on our board for 6 years. Any chance we could get you back on our board?
Oh, it's possible. It's possible.
It would be really wonderful. So, where's your next adventure?
Well, I actually am expecting to go back to Tanzania. By the way, that's how they pronounce it there, Tanzania, not Tanzania. You'll hear me pronounce it both ways.
Tanzania?
Tanzania, because it was Tanganyika and Zanzibar. When they put it together, they just say Tanzania. So, but anyway, I expect to go back there maybe next month in August. They've got another couple of projects.
And the time change and all of that, when you're talking with these people, I know during the pandemic you had to have you didn't let them down and say, I'll check you when this is over. You kept in contact with all these folks.
Well, actually, they were very creative in how they solved that problem during COVID, both SCORE and IESC. And what they did was they managed to get an in-country volunteer, and I worked as a remote volunteer, and so I did many more projects by Zoom than I would have been able to do if I'd had to go in person. So that really it made us much more productive. And the same with SCORE. When, before COVID, I had to go into Portland, and I might be able to do 2 or maybe 3 client engagements a month. With COVID, Zoom, I was doing, at one time during a grant application process, I was doing like 30 a month.
Oh, wow.
So it was much more productive.
And I would think that that's, for them, for being farming and getting all of the things that they need to do during the day, would be hard for them to meet with somebody.
Yes, that's right. So it's much more flexibility.
Yeah,
and
that's really great.
Ability to manage the calendar. So that's true today. I'm still doing most of my work by Zoom, but like yesterday I was up in Denmark on a farm.
Oh, wow.
So. What
kind?
Vegetable.
Do you ever go to any of the blueberry farms that are here in Maine?
No, actually, we've had some indirect contact with them, but they have their own resources that they work with. Cooperative Extension does a lot for them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not a blueberry expert.
Okay, but you like them.
I like them. Yeah.
So can I just bring up, a few years ago you won an award. Can you talk a little bit about that award? Because that was a big award.
Which award? With ISC?
Yeah.
Well, actually last year. Last year, my partner and I, the in-country partner and I, were working on a project with a bank, and the result of that was the bank got involved in agricultural finance, and they greatly increased their scope of operations in agriculture, and so we won an award for getting that accomplished. So.
Wow. I know you're very humble at what you do and what you've achieved, but many people around the world appreciate it.
Well, I have a lot of reason to be humble. There are a lot of great people that I work with.
Yeah, but it's so nice to be able to help out these folks that just, they've got a really great passion for something, but they just don't even know how to.
Well, I almost feel like it's an obligation. I have the agricultural knowledge and the experience in banking, and I almost feel like it's an obligation to do what I can to help these people and organizations.
Well, it's very kind of you, because I think a lot of people would say, yeah, I'm just going to go retire and work on my tennis game.
And unfortunately, too many do, but these are great opportunities.
Yeah.
And I would really encourage people to take a look at score.org, take a look at iesc.org, and see the work that they're doing, and see if there's a role for you, because they need help. I'm not getting younger. There's going to be a time when I won't be able to do it, but we need people who can do this kind of thing. So it's important that we have new people coming on.
Well, let's hope you get a few.
Yeah.
Especially right around here, because I know that there's a lot of talent.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for being with us. Thank you for what you do for our community and our library. And we've got some birds in the back. Can you hear them?
I'm always hearing birds.
They're cheering you on. They're cheering you on, Allyn. So, but really, thanks for all you do.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And we appreciate you being
share.
here. And thanks to you all for watching tonight, and to our producer, Mike Kelly, thank you. And we hope to see you back here next time on What's Your Story?